Hey guys, Tyler here, and this is the Garage Warrior podcast and video cast, and I am super excited today to have on the call one more time Jimmy Moore. How's it going, Jimmy?
Hey man, what's going on?
Not much, brother. Just getting on the phone with Jimmy Moore, prepared to talk about cholesterol today. So, Jimmy, you recently came out with a book all about cholesterol, and I've been getting questions over and over and over again about cholesterol. There you go. There's the book. If you guys are watching, Cholesterol Clarity: What the HDL is Wrong with My Numbers by Jimmy Moore. You guys can check that out on Amazon, I'm sure, or Jimmy's website, which we'll talk about in a few. But Jimmy, maybe for people who are listening, how did you get involved with learning more about cholesterol, and who did you work with to help develop this book?
This book was a long time in the making.
Sure.
As you know, and I've told my story on your show before, I lost 180 pounds in 2004, and I go to see my doctor, Tyler, and I was like, man, he's going to think I'm this incredible rock star of a patient, man.
Right.
And I go and see him. I've lost 180 pounds. All my health is, markedly better. He's just going to just be incredibly proud. So he was proud of the weight loss. But then he said, well, how'd you do this? And I said, oh, it was the Atkins diet. And he went, oh. And I went, uh-oh, here we go. He said, let's check your cholesterol levels. That was the first thing that popped in his mind. And, it should have kind of dawned on me at that point, something was up. But anyway, we got the numbers run, and I get the numbers back before I go see him. And I saw that my HDL cholesterol, which is considered the good cholesterol, had gone from somewhere in the low 20s, upper teens, low 20s to 72. Now, if you know anything about HDL, that's the hardest number to move, to get to go up, and especially for us guys. Girls, they can go well over 100 very easily, and we can talk about how they do that. But for us guys, you can do all the things in the world, and you're lucky if you get it to 70. So 72, I was very proud of. So that was one. And then the other number that kind of stuck out to me was my triglycerides, which is another blood fat, and it was 43. Now, I don't know what it was beforehand, but it was probably, in the hundreds at least before I started low carb. So I looked at those two numbers. I was like, man, he's going to think this is just incredible. My health is better, yada, yada. So I go to the doctor. This was way back in 2005, right after I lost my weight in 2004. And I said, what do you think about my cholesterol? And he's like, these numbers are horrible. And I went, what are you talking about? Aren't the HDL and triglycerides, aren't they right where they need to be? And in fact, probably some of the best you've seen. Oh yeah, those are incredible. But your LDL is 185 and your total cholesterol is 285. You need to be on a statin drug. And now he had me on statins before, Tyler. I took Lipitor and started having joint pain. In fact, I was playing some basketball at my church, and I went up for a rebound, and this thumb right here just went straight backwards. And I had to go to the emergency room, and the ER doc said, do you take cholesterol-lowering meds? And they're like, yeah. He's like, you need to talk to your doctor about coming off of those, because even then, they knew there were problems with them. And so anyway, I had been on both Lipitor and Crestor, and gave me the bad joint pain. I really was not interested in getting into joint pain anymore.
Right.
So when he started saying, well, you need to be on a statin again, I went, we're going to have to figure out something else. And it was at that point that I realized there's more to this cholesterol story than what we've been told. And so for the past decade, I've basically been looking for those answers for me personally. And then along the way, I've met a lot of these different experts on my podcast that I've been able to interview. Many of them showed up in Cholesterol Clarity as an expert. So I just wanted to get to the bottom of it. And not just that, there have been a lot of books written about cholesterol, but not many have written it from the perspective of, all right, I realize you're not a medical doctor. You're not some medical professional. You need to have it spoken in plain English. I'm a plain English kind of guy. And so that's what we try to do in Cholesterol Clarity, literally hold you by the hand and say, you know what, there's more to this story than total cholesterol and LDL cholesterol, which is all your doctor's focusing on.
Absolutely. Well, let's dig right in, Jimmy. That's a great little backstory to people. They know that you've gone through it yourself. Why should we not listen about total cholesterol? Tell us about total cholesterol and what that really means.
Man, total cholesterol is one of the biggest scams at least on the cholesterol panel, because people, they say, well, you need to make your total cholesterol go lower. Well, let's stop and think about what's in the total cholesterol. You've got LDL-C, you've got HDL-C, and you got this thing called VLDL. Let's get VLDL out of the way first. All VLDL is your triglycerides number divided by 5. That's your VLDL. So that's one of the numbers, and you obviously want that one to be as low as possible because lower triglycerides is a good thing. But let's look at the HDL-C. You want that to be higher. So why are we arbitrarily saying in a total cholesterol, let's go lower? No, one of the numbers, HDL-C, is one you want to have higher. So, I had a lady about 2 months ago wrote me, and she was all upset because she went to see her doctor, and her doctor said, you need to be on a statin drug because she had a 225 total cholesterol. Now, that's what they looked at. And I said, well, what was the breakdown of the LDL and HDL and all? Her HDL was 130 of that. And I'm going, so what does he want you to take away more of the good cholesterol to make your total be within range without having a statin drug deficiency suddenly? It just didn't make sense to me. So HDL is a good thing that you want higher. So that's another reason total cholesterol is kind of bogus. And then the final piece, and this one I think is the most important, Tyler, is LDL is not an exact number. Everybody thinks LDL-C on their cholesterol panel is directly measured. It's configured using this thing called the Friedewald equation. You can Google it if you want to look it up. And basically what that does is it plugs in your other numbers and then it estimates what your LDL is. And here's a dirty little secret. If you have lower triglycerides and higher HDL, which tends to be the case when you eat a paleo or low carb diet, that Friedewald equation is going to way overestimate your LDL. So you could go see your doctor and your LDL could be 180 according to the Friedewald equation, but directly measured, it probably wouldn't be that high. And yet he's going to put you on medication simply because that estimated number tells him that you're in the danger zone.
Absolutely. That's just crazy. You know, the fact that you mentioned that one of them should be higher kind of just debunks the entire, cholesterol number myth as well. And then the estimation is just insane. It's just crazy that they're just literally guessing. Now, one of the things I've heard is that you can go back for a cholesterol panel several days in a row and get different types of readings. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
3 hours from now, you could have it run right now and then go 3 hours later and it will be different. In fact, one of my cholesterol clarity experts was Chris Masterjohn, and he's done, a lot of these kind of articles before. And he said that it can fluctuate upwards of 40, 50 points within just a few hours.
Wow.
So basing treatment on one singular number without doing kind of a series of tests over time is really kind of foolish. And I'll give you an example. I think last time I was on your show, I was talking about my nutritional ketosis, where I was actually losing weight last year. In the middle of it, Tyler, just for fun, while I was writing this cholesterol book, I went and got my total cholesterol run at my local Sam's Club. They did it for free. And so I'm like, okay, I know it doesn't mean anything, but this should be fun. So I go and I get it tested, and the lady was all happy-go-lucky and chipper and happy until she saw my total cholesterol. 419 was the number, 419. And she was like, sir, you okay? She thought I was going to keel over right there because my cholesterol was that high. And so she thought I was in great danger of dying or whatever right in front of her from having that high of cholesterol. 6 months later, I go get it run after becoming kind of weight stable, and weight loss is one of the things that can mess with your cholesterol, by the way, and we can talk about those things. Yeah. But it was 306 6 months later. So it tells you and I didn't change a thing other than I stopped losing weight. So that tells you how much it can fluctuate, even over a brief period of time without really changing anything. Now, of course, any doctor would have put me on a statin medication. It would have artificially lowered that cholesterol down into somewhat of a normal range, but it would not have improved my heart health.
Sure.
At all.
Sure. And so why is it that they're trying to lower your cholesterol into this healthy range? What is their sales pitch behind lowering your cholesterol?
Yeah, the mantra is there's a bad cholesterol and there's a good cholesterol. And so the bad you need a whole lot less of. And of course, in the case of most health professionals and health organizations, and we do a whole chapter on just what they believe about cholesterol, they look at LDL, that estimated number, remember, calculated. They're looking at that number as the dastardly one. And if you have a higher level of that number, then you need to bring that down by any means possible. Now, there's lots of ways you can lower LDL cholesterol. You can eat a low-fat diet. That will lower your LDL cholesterol. Of course, it will also lower your HDL cholesterol and raise your triglycerides, but that's another story. Another thing that does a really good job of lowering LDL-C is vegetable oils. Lowers it, lowers it, lowers it. The problem is it lowers it at the expense of, and this is going to shock some people because they haven't heard this information before, the good kind of LDL. Yes, there's good LDL. It's not all bad. So the good LDL is the large, fluffy kind, what's known as pattern A LDL particles. And then pattern B is the small, dense LDL. So when you consume vegetable oils, all of these big ones, they get taken away. And all you're left with is the small ones. The small ones are the atherogenic kind. Those are the kind that penetrate the arterial wall and lead to the inflammation, which is the real cause of heart disease, not cholesterol. So I know we're getting a little bit technical here, but just to make it easy, there is a test that you can run. You know, we've been talking about LDL-C as an estimated number. The test that you can have run to directly measure these large, fluffy kind and the small, dense kind of LDL is called NMR lipoprofile test. It's from a company called LipoScience. Any doctor in America can have that run. It's done through LabCorp. In fact, I run mine online. I don't even go see a doctor anymore to get it run. You can go a lot of places online. We put several of them in the book where people can just go online and you can pay for the test and go get it run at your local LabCorp. And then 3 days later in your email box, you get the results. It's pretty cool.
Can you tell us one of those websites, Jimmy, real quick? So people have something to use.
The one that I like to use, and they're not a sponsor or anything, but privatemdlabs.com is the one that I use. If you go there and you just sign up for their mail list, they'll send you a coupon for like 15% off. And I think I run the NMR for something like $1.25, so $125 will get you that test. And man, it gives you the total LDL particles. So it's called LDLP. And we explain all this in the book, so you can get greater detail there.
Sure.
Small LDLP, which is those small ones we were talking about that you don't want. You want a lot less of the small than you do the large. And then the third key number, and it does all your cholesterol panel just like your normal one. But the other number that's kind of cool on that one is called an LPIR score, and it's basically an insulin resistance marker. So it kind of shows you if you're insulin sensitive or if you're becoming insulin resistant or if you're already full-fledged insulin resistant. And blood sugar does count in all this. You know, cholesterol, sure. People are like, well, cholesterol and blood sugar, they don't have anything to do with each other. They have a lot to do with each other. And so that LPIR score will kind of clue you in as to how you're doing.
So if somebody goes to their doctor, Jimmy, and they're like, we want to take your total cholesterol, what should they say? What should they ask for from that doctor? And how should they interpret that data to prevent themselves from going on drugs that they may not need?
Yeah. So whenever a doctor tries to push a statin drug on you based totally on just the total cholesterol, the next line of defense is, okay, I hear what you're saying, doctor. You're concerned that my total cholesterol means something. Why don't we run the particle size test? So that one I was just talking about, the NMR lipoprofile test, get that one back and it'll show you whether you have mostly the large fluffy kind of LDL or the small dense. If you have a lot of small dense, there's some changes you need to be making. And if you're not already eating more fat, which is going to raise your HDL cholesterol, if you're not already cutting your carbohydrates to your personal tolerance level, doesn't mean zero carb, but it means to your personal level, then you want to do that. And the way you know that, Tyler, this is kind of a cool thing too. People can look at their cholesterol test right now, and if you have a triglycerides number over 100, guess what? You're eating way too many carbs for your tolerance. That is a key marker in knowing whether you're at your tolerance level for carbohydrates or not. Now, for me, I know I have to say super duper low carb, but that's for me. Some people can eat 75 grams of carbohydrates, 100 grams of carbohydrates, and still have triglycerides under 100. So you've got to tinker with that. There is no like, I'll tell you the grand number of carbs to eat in a day, and that's for everybody. It doesn't work that way. You have to kind of figure it out on your own. But the trig number will help. So when the triglycerides optimally get under 70 and your HDL optimally gets over 70, guess what? You almost don't even have to run that NMR. You're going to have mostly the large fluffy kind. Now you can have it run, like you said, if your doctor is pushing,
Sure.
a statin, have that run and you can verify. There's two other things that you can have run as well, or actually three. One is another blood test called a C-reactive protein. It's sometimes called HSCRP, high sensitivity C-reactive protein. That is the key inflammation marker, and you're going to learn very quickly in cholesterol clarity, it ain't the cholesterol, it's the inflammation. And so if you've got
Sure.
that number, it's going to be below 1.0. You're golden. That is like the optimal range. Now, really anything under 2.0 is pretty good, but 1.0 and below is what you're looking for. And if it's below that, who cares what your high cholesterol is? It doesn't mean anything because you can't have heart disease without inflammation. So
Sure.
that CRP is going to show you that. But if your doctor's still worried and still pushing this drug that he's making a kickback from, by the way, you can have two other tests run. One is called a CT heart scan. So it's basically this CAT scan of your chest. It takes about 2 minutes, and it will show if there's any arterial calcified plaque happening in your arteries. It's really kind of a cool test. You do get a little bit of radiation exposure, but man, for what it tells you, it's golden. So I've had that run. In fact, I had it run earlier this year in preparation for my book. 0 was my score. Not a single bit of plaque in my arteries, despite eating 80% of my calories in the form of dietary fat. So take that, Dean Ornish. And then the last test that you can have run, if he's still not convinced after all of that, there's this thing called the CIMT. So the carotid artery, they'll do like an ultrasound of both of your carotid arteries, and they'll see if there's any kind of calcification and buildup of plaque that's building there. Now, after all that, if all those come back clean, you can ask your doctor a simple question. What does my total cholesterol mean in the context of all of those test results? Because what we're looking at is not risk factors. We're looking for signs of actual disease. And if you get a heart scan and there's nothing there, and you do a CIMT, ultrasound of your carotid artery, and there's nothing there, and your inflammation is under 1, why are we worried about cholesterol?
Right. I think that's so powerful. Everything you just said. You guys listening to this call, rewind it about 10 minutes, get out your pen and paper and start writing this stuff down, because the whole scare tactics that this industry has around high cholesterol equals you're going to die from a heart attack is
Yep.
crazy. And I'm so happy you mentioned the heart scan as well, because we're talking about something that can give you just a result that says, hey, you do or you don't have arterial plaque. And
Right.
so there's no reason to take these drugs unnecessarily when we have all this stuff available to us. That's fantastic, Jimmy. You mentioned one thing. You said that heart disease cannot happen without inflammation. Can you expand on that for us?
Yeah, so a lot of people, they'll see a clogged artery. So what's in a clogged artery? Cholesterol.
Right.
But does anybody stop to wonder, why is the cholesterol there? People just think, okay, I eat butter, the butter just automatically just goes and clogs my artery. It doesn't work that
Right.
way. What happens is the inflammation, which by the way is brought on by stress and excessive carbohydrates in the diet and vegetable oils and all of these things that us paleo people know to avoid, all of that brings on inflammation. So when inflammation happens, there's an analogy I like to use with inflammation. Inflammation is like a fire. So imagine your neighbor's house is on fire right now, and the firefighter comes out and he puts out the fire. Would we then turn around and say that the firefighter caused that fire to happen? No, I mean, that would be ludicrous. And yet that's exactly what we've done with cholesterol. Inflammation is the fire inside of the body, and cholesterol is the firefighter trying to put out the fire. So this is the most important organ in our entire body, the heart. And so if there's inflammation there, guess what? Cholesterol is going to go there trying desperately to put out the fire of inflammation. And so if the inflammation persists, more firefighters have to come to try to save you. And so that's kind of the analogy I like to use. It's a very vivid one for people because they can imagine a firefighter and they wouldn't blame firefighters, and yet we're doing the exact same thing with cholesterol.
Right. Blaming the cholesterol for the problem, not the inflammation. So
Yep.
maybe you could expand a little bit for us for people who are listening to this call who might be a total beginner at like a paleo diet. What
Yeah.
fats are healthy? What fats are unhealthy? And then maybe
Yeah.
we'll dig into some other foods that could potentially cause inflammation in the body.
Sure. So on the fat front, hey, I was a little onomatopoetic there. Fat front, you're going to look at real food-based fats. And when I say fats, and most real food-based fats are going to be one of two, that just to keep it real simple. Saturated fat, which I know you've probably heard of as the bad fat, along with trans fats. Yeah, trans fats are bad news, but they're not even close to being the same as saturated fats. So saturated fats, so you've got butter, coconut oil, full fat meats and cheeses, lard, those kinds of things. Those are all saturated fats, and your body actually thrives on saturated fat. Now, it's not the only good fat. There's another one called monounsaturated fats. So things like avocados and avocado oil and olive oil and those kinds of foods can all be a healthy part of a heart healthy diet, the good fats. The bad fats are the ones we've kind of talked about. The polyunsaturated fats are those vegetable oils. And I'm sorry, but the American Heart Association can take their little heart healthy symbol and shove it because it's not heart healthy at all. And I kind of explained this a little bit earlier. Why do they have that little heart healthy symbol on things like canola oil and corn oil and all these things that you see huge aisles of them, Tyler, at your grocery store full of these polyunsaturated fats? Why do they think they're heart healthy? It goes back to lowering that LDL-C number again.
Right.
And as I explained, the way it lowers it is it takes away all the good LDL particles, those big, large, fluffy kind, leaving behind those small BB-sized ones, which then oxidize, which leads to inflammation. And we got the whole story that we just talked about with inflammation.
Sure. Absolutely. And so what are some other foods, Jimmy, that might cause inflammation?
Definitely processed carbohydrates, which in our day and age, it's hard to avoid.
Sure.
If you're going to buy any packaged product, just about every single packaged product has a vegetable oil and a refined carbohydrate.
It's like the bundle, right?
Yeah, and you know why, Tyler? It's because it's dirt cheap.
Right, and it's
You know,
it lasts
vegetable
on the
oil
shelves.
is exactly vegetable oils. Last forever. I mean, I've seen some Twinkies last on shelves. Blow the dust off. It's got, because it will last that long. And here's a clue. If your food doesn't spoil within a week, you're probably not eating the right kind of food. You're probably not eating food. You have food-like substances in your cabinets. Get rid of those foods and stick to real food, and you're probably going to be okay.
Absolutely.
But carbs are a big one. And people think, well, whole grains, they're healthy, healthy whole grains. Artery clogging saturated fat, healthy whole grain. We have these
There's
images
the
in our
heart healthy
head.
stamp right there.
Exactly. And again, the reason they have that is it does lower LDL cholesterol, but it raises, this is the one they never talk about, whole grains and sugars and all these things raise triglycerides. And if I could go on a campaign to make triglyceride awareness happen, I would, because too many people are probably walking around with triglyceride levels in the triple digits. And for a lot of people, the upper triple, maybe even quadruple digits.
Wow.
One guy told me he had a 2,500 triglyceride number. That's like ungodly high.
Yeah.
And he went low carb and it dropped down in 1 month to 250.
Wow. It's cut by 10
powerful.
times. Wow.
Powerful.
That's really powerful. So that to me is a better way to drop your total cholesterol than trying to eat all the heart healthy whole grains and seed oils, right?
Well, and not even worry about whatever your total cholesterol. Like right now, my total cholesterol is 306.
Right.
And I really don't care that it's 306.
Sure.
Because I have an HDL cholesterol of 79. I have triglycerides that are in the upper 30s. I have a CRP, that key inflammation marker we were talking about, of 0.87.
Right.
I have a heart scan score of 0. I did the carotid artery scan, nothing.
Yeah.
I'm not worried.
You have proof.
I have great proof that real hard evidence that actual disease is taking place is not taking place, despite having what most would consider OMG levels of total cholesterol. And I also, in preparation for Cholesterol Clarity, got a test run of my to see if I have the genetic predisposition for hypercholesterolemia, as they call it, familial hypercholesterolemia. It came back negative. It came back, you don't have it as a genetic marker. So why is it higher? Heck if I know, Tyler. But again, I don't care.
You don't care because you got the proof right there. Now,
Right.
Jimmy, some people on the call might be wondering right now, how much would it cost to get these different panels done? I'm sure some of them, your doctor are going to do it and it's going to be covered under insurance, but the other ones might not. Maybe you can give us a little clarity on that.
Yeah, pretty much all of these tests that I've talked about can be done through your doctor's office. And, he might question, well, why do you want that NMR? You don't need that, but he wants to put you on a statin.
Right.
Well, before you put me on that drug, I want that test.
You don't need that. You need this.
Exactly. He can't make any money off the NMR lipoprofile, but he'll make a whole heck of a lot. Did I say that out loud? Yes, I did. So you can have those run yourself. Like, I don't have health insurance, so I have to do all the things myself. So that privatemdlabs.com, they'll do the NMR lipoprofile. They'll do the C-reactive protein test. Now, the heart scan, you do need a doctor because it's radiation. So get a doctor to at least prescribe it for you. Here in South Carolina, I can get that test run for about $100.
$100 to know whether or not you actually have clogged arteries.
And that's something.
That's crazy.
And I wish it was more readily available and people would know about it. Well, we're trying with my book to get it out there. And I know one of my Cholesterol Clarity experts was Wheat Belly author, Dr. William Davis. He's been out there for years talking about this whole heart scan thing. That was his thing before he was Mr. Wheat Belly.
Right.
But man, I mean, it does tell the tale.
Yeah, that's so crazy. I cannot believe that there's stuff out there that just literally tells you you are susceptible or you aren't. And these numbers don't really matter when they're just taken out of context into one big number.
Yeah, it doesn't mean you have a statin deficiency because you have a total cholesterol over 200.
Absolutely. Now, Jimmy, before we take off on the call today, I want to kind of leave people with the fact that you're not just some guy making this stuff up, right? So tell us a little bit about how this book came to be, because you've interviewed some of the top doctors in the world on this. I want to make sure people understand that this is not bro science between the two of us, right?
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Yeah. So in October 2006, I started this podcast. A buddy of mine said, hey, you write really well on your blog. You'd be killer behind a microphone doing a podcast. I'm like, what the heck's a podcast? This was 2006. Nobody knew what podcasts were then. So I was like, okay, what do I do? Just talk? And just talk behind. So I started like the first 50 episodes of the Living La Vida Low Carb Show were just me ranting about high fructose corn syrup's going to kill you, it's the devil, and all this kind of stuff. And then I attended one of the these like scientific conferences, and I met a lot of these MDs, and I was like, I'd like to interview a few of these people. So I started interviewing them, and I really liked that. Of course, I was like Mr. Roboto when I started. So let me tell you, and it was horrible.
Right.
You're way better than I was.
I appreciate that.
So I start interviewing these people. I'm like, man, this is kind of fun. I'm learning stuff. And so over the past 7 years and over 750 episodes, I've been able to talk with just about everybody in the whole world, around the world, on just about every subject in the realm of health. Now, I don't pretend to be a PhD, MD, RD, or any kind of D. All I do is take the information and try to make it palatable to a lay audience, because that's my mission. I was a lay person, still am, but was when I was 410 pounds. I needed somebody to talk to me in my language. I didn't need science speak. I didn't need bro speak. I needed somebody that could say, okay, this is what the science is saying, but in the language that I can understand. So when it came time that I got this book deal, that I could write this book, and I was like, yeah, I definitely want to write one on cholesterol, I knew exactly who to contact as experts. So I did brand new interviews just for Cholesterol Clarity of 29 of the top experts on cholesterol, kind of picked their brains. And throughout the book, you'll see these things called Moment of Clarity. And it's basically direct quotes from the interviews that I did with these different people. Now, in addition to that, I also have a co-author, Dr. Eric C. Westman. He's an MD at Duke University in Durham. And he kind of went behind me, Tyler, and said, okay, I'm going to make sure everything, matches up with the science. And he did. Anytime anything was a little bit off, he'd say, okay, you need to rewrite this and make it say this. And, thankfully he didn't have to do that too much. I kind of knew this pretty well.
Right.
But I had that kind of as a backup. So hopefully the credibility is there with 29 of the top, PhDs, MDs, RDs, and just leading voices in the health community, along with my Cholesterol Clarity co-author, Dr. Eric Westman, who, by the way, was also a co-author on The New Atkins for a New You, if you remember that book.
Right, right. That's fantastic, Jimmy. Thank you so much for sharing that, because it's so important that we validate everything we've just said by talking about that. It's so important that people know that there is so much research behind this. It's not just you have to go to your doctor and listen to what they say. And so thank you so much for sharing that with us. That's awesome. So Jimmy sent me an advanced copy of his book a little while back, and I've been digging through it slowly, and it is fantastic, and that's why I asked him to come back on the show. So Jimmy, where can people find your new book?
So we have a website specifically for it at cholesterolclarity.com. It's, of course, on Amazon.com and all your major retailers. Barnes & Noble has it in stock on their store shelves. So go check it out. We're working on our next one now in the Clarity series. A little sneak peek for you, Tyler. Keto Clarity is coming in August 2014.
Oh, that should be fun. We'll get you back on the show to talk all about ketones and stuff at that point. That could be a really fun show. So, Jimmy, I ask everybody this. I've asked you this probably before, but you've gone from 410 pounds, you've lost to hundreds of pounds, and you've learned so much, and you've transformed your life. What's your secret to success?
Consistency in doing what you know works for you. Too many people, they say, well, XYZ lost weight doing this, or so-and-so got their cholesterol to go down by taking this supplement. Stop looking at what other people are doing. You are the only one that can know what's right for you. You just got to remain consistent in those things that you know works for you. And so if you find what works for you, why would you stop doing what works for you? And even if you hit kind of a rough patch, and we all do, dude, I mean, I can raise my hand on that one, but you just got to remain consistent on what you know works. And if you do that, you're going to be successful for the rest of your life.
Awesome, Jimmy. Well, thank you so much for coming back on the call, for giving us some cholesterol clarity. I really appreciate you taking the time today.
Yeah, man, my pleasure.